Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for coming in tonight. Happy Thursday. Hope all is going well. Thanks, replay viewers, for coming in tonight. And thank you, YouTube viewers, as well. YouTube viewers, if you'd like to ever watch live, you can join me on Periscope. Just download the Periscope app, search for Penguin and Fish. I'm here every night at 9:30 p.m. Central. So, all right, guys, we are starting block 28 of the Splendid Sampler tonight. It's Stitching Fashion by Charise Randell, and it is some crazy town paper piecing, which I love. So this is what I love about paper piecing, that it just looks, when it turns into a shape, and I just think that's just the funnest. So we're going to start that tonight. I'm going to flip you guys around, and we'll get going. Trying to stay awake tonight. Yeah, I know this 9:30 time Eastern gets pretty late. Yes, so this definitely, Kathy, I'm totally with you. It looks like a fun one. It is a cute little dress with a little needle and a little thread spool there. And so this is what I think of when I think of paper piecing, is a block or a quilt that looks like a picture. So this is gonna look like the dress and the spool and needle. This is, to me, what the magic of paper piecing is. It looks like, yeah, the pieces are so tiny, but I actually think it's easier with the tiny pieces. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be okay, guys. If you guys are nervous, it'll be okay. We're gonna walk through this whole entire process of doing this, especially for an intricate design like this. This is typically what I see when doing a paper piecing thing. It is like a whole picture with lots of different parts, and there's a process of doing it, but once you get going on it, it's so easy and relaxing and nice. I love it because I don't have to measure. I can kind of cut wherever. I can be sloppy, but it still ends up perfectly clean. I can cut out just blobs, and it works out perfect in the end, and that's the magic of it. So, all right, guys, we are going to get going. If you're new here, my name is Alyssa Thomas from Penguin and Fish, where we create lovely and quirky hand embroidery patterns and kits. I'm the author of Sew and Stitch Embroidery and a fabric designer as well. And I'm here every night at, oops, sorry, guys. I'm here every night at 9:30 p.m. Central. And I'm here and just chilling and crafting, and I invite you guys to come craft with me. So, all right, and we've been working on the Splendid Sampler. You can go find out more at thesplendidsampler.com. All right, guys, I will flip you around, and we will get going. Let me know what you guys are working on tonight. All right, here is all my fabrics all laid out. So I am thinking of doing a little red dress. Oh, it's actually flipped. I was looking at the reverse because the template is going to be in the reverse. So let's just look at it this way. I'm thinking that I'll do the little dress in red with some of this yellow trim. I'm trying to use as many scraps as I can. So then I think the needle will use maybe some of this blue, and I'm not completely decided on what I want to do for the spools yet, but I'm thinking maybe this, because it kind of looks like thread. If I put it this way, it has like this horizontal feel. And then I have just this fun, my little sparkly gold plus sign things. I think I'll use that for the rest of the spool. So, okay. Oh, you're working on the Hello Bear quilt. Oh, that's cute. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is check out this template. So you can kind of see each little part is divided into different letters. So if you can see, these are all labeled A. These are all labeled B up here. This is E, D. So you can start to kind of break it apart from there. But even before I do that, I'm going to, just with some colored pencils, color in the shapes a little so I don't get lost. Because we're going to cut this up, and I don't want to just lose my way. Oh, you're watching intently on this one. So this is a photocopy of this. I've left this one intact so I can use it for reference, and this one I'm going to cut up. So what I'm first going to do is I'm just going to quickly, I have my little thing of colored pencils here. I'm going to just grab some of those and just quickly color in where I want it. So like this was going to be my red dress. These are all going to be my red dress. And I think these are the little like caps, these little guys there. I think I'm going to do that in the red as well. And then, this is actually, you'll want to do something like this, coloring in your little spots, because once you cut it apart, it really is, really easy to lose your way. Yep, and we're going to have to add seam allowances as well. So, all right, this is kind of my yellow trim, and the background, I'm not gonna color in the background. I know that's my dark blue. This is fine. I'll just color it in anyway. That's gonna be my little blue needle. And what was this? Oh, this was red. My red. I'll just go like this because that was the fabric that is kind of like that zigzag fabric. So I'll know this is my zigzag piece. That's the only zigzag piece. And then I had the little green tops. So there we go. All right. So it's much easier to see the dress and all the shapes out of there now that I have it colored, which is going to be good because I don't want to lose my way as I get going. So, okay. I am now going to cut this out. For how long have you done this? I have not done this all that long enough to know that I really enjoy it, I guess. All right, here, I'm going to unflip you guys. So I got my iron already there, and my ironing board. That'll be used a lot in paper piecing. All right, I'm slowly going down, so hopefully we don't flip. All right. So next, we're going to cut this out, and how we're going to cut it out is by the letters. So like we saw earlier, it has, this is a bunch of A's here, a bunch of D's, here's an F, here's an I4. Oh, here's, that's kind of funny. I4, oh, here's the rest of them. I thought there was an H, but it's the rest of the I's, I2. So, all right, so what we're going to do is we're going to cut it out with those intact. And I think I'm not going to worry about this line out here. We're going to have to remember to add seam allowances to everything, but that's not going to be difficult. So we'll just cut these guys out. So some of it is pretty easy to see where to cut out. Like I can cut all the way up here along this line, so that might be a first good cut. You know what? I gotta go grab a paper scissors. I'll be right back. There, this will go a lot faster. My big old paper scissors. That other scissors is good for household stuff too, but it's a little short. All right, let's work on this area over here. Normally, I like having these all cut out, and some of the other paper piecing ones that I've done on Periscope here, I have it all cut out right away. But I just wanted to make sure. I wanted to share like the whole coloring it in thing, because sometimes on these pictures, when it's just a whole bunch of lines and every letters, all of a sudden it's easy to lose the shape that you're actually doing. So okay. Here, now let's start looking at this. Okay, we have J, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that looks like that's all there is. So I'm going to just cut that shape. All right, let's start cleaning up around here. Oh, well, that's good. That's good to know. All right, so we got that shape. Now here are all the K's. You want to make sure that you've gotten all the letters so you're not accidentally cutting one off, because you'll have to re-photocopy it if you cut it off or reprint it. Okay. There's the K's, the L's. I'm trying to really stand a line here too. Okay, and the M's. So we got those sections together. I have not finished the Dresden block yet. Nope, I'm like 7 behind now. It's just bad. I only work on these blocks in the evenings here, so 9:30 in the evenings, and I go for about 45 to like an hour long, minutes to an hour long, and that is not enough time to finish all these blocks. So even doing it every night, it's just a couple days before the next block's released. So I am not that done. I'm done with the circle part of the Dresden. I just have to stitch it all on, basically. Oh yeah, so I'm gonna have to do like a makeup day, like just a day full of trying to finish blocks, because I'm behind on the Nature's Walk embroidery one, and there's a few other ones. The cut once, measure twice, cut once. I have to take my stabilizer off of that. All right, I'm gonna just cut straight across here. None of the G's or H's or I's go up to the top here. So this is gonna be a safe cut right here. When designers are making these paper pieces, that's what they're looking for, is like the clean cuts where they can go all the way across. And when you can't go all the way across anymore, then you gotta start a whole new segment. So, like for this one, for example, the designer probably couldn't go up to the L space or the K space without getting like weird angles or something. So they started a whole new segment. That's kind of how that works. All right. So now these aren't so straight anymore. So here we got the eyes. It's going right up along this dress line here. But yeah, now I'm starting to see, how it's helpful to have the colors, because now I got this like wacky, crazy shape here, and I can still know that, oh yeah, this is the little trim here and of the dress, and this is the main part of the dress. Because this is the puzzle piece. Wow, there are a lot of segments to this. But when you break down the segments, there aren't really all that many pieces to it. Like this letter G only has four little pieces. So that's kind of fun. All right. And this H only has 2, so some things will go pretty quickly. Okay, what do we got going on here? We got a C and an F on the sides here. Those don't look like they go anywhere else, so let's start with those. And I did switch my rotary cutter blade tonight, so I have a nice fresh blade for all this. I had a nick in it, so whenever I was cutting, I had one little thread that wouldn't work. All right, I'm gonna just turn this way as a reminder. And you know what? I might even draw an arrow on these two where it's hard to know. This one too. I'm gonna just point up arrows on all these, so I know ultimately when I put these together, because I don't want to accidentally put together my block like this, because look, it won't match anymore. So by putting it upwards like that, I think that'll be a little helpful. These other pieces, I think I can figure out. But yeah, these little individual pieces that look like, they could be, different or like close enough that, you might mess up. I put a little up there. Okay. So here's another point where a pretty safe line right down the middle there, so I'm going to do that. Yeah, the letters read upright, that's true, but, you never know. In the heat of the moment, that extra arrow might be a hair helpful. Okay. Yep, this will be on YouTube, so you can pause and play. It'll be on probably by tomorrow by 11 a.m. Central Time is usually when I get them up. Okay, so now we have this A piece and the B piece. Let's cut that up. Yep, so I will be working on this until Sunday when we have the new block. And then if I'm not done with this, this will go on my pile of unfinished blocks that I have to make up. Alright, and then this last little piece here. Okay, we got the E's, and then the D's are all down here. Okay. So there we are. Step 1 done. This is so there are a lot of segments to this thing, but it's gonna, I love it. It's like this magic puzzle piece that kind of goes together when we're done, and it's just fun. So I think I might start with letter A. I mean, at this point, you can go in whatever order you want. All we're gonna do is we're gonna go through each one of these and make each segment, and we're not gonna, I'm not gonna sew any of it together, any of these pieces together until they're all made. So you can just pick wherever you want to go. I think I might start at what looks like one of the hardest parts, which is letter A. Not necessarily harder, but perceived, like it's perceived to be a little harder, but just because it's so small. But I've done some small paper piecing, and I actually find it easier, and you can use more of your little itty bitty scraps, and I just think it's the funnest thing, just these itty bitty ones. So I actually have my scrap bin here. This is what I've been collecting. This is a little clipboard that I've been collecting all my little scraps in. So here we go. This is our trim. I might start grabbing little pieces from here to use up, since there are a lot of little pieces in this guy. So, okay, we'll start with the bodice here. I'm going to start with letter A, and in the meantime, all these guys are going to go out of the way. So I'm just going to put it on a little stack. And I think maybe I'll do this whole upper section, and then these guys we won't need till later. And then move this way. So I'm going to kind of stack them in that order. We'll do these guys, and we'll do both bodice pieces first. Okay, so I'm going to just set those aside. I mean, I might actually grab a paper clip before the evening, before I put this all away. I might actually grab a paper clip and just clip all these together so they don't start flying away on me. Oh, I need a tray. I know. Oh, yeah, a tray would be really good. And that's my mom. Hi, Mom. I didn't see you pop in. All right, so here we go. We are going to start with that. Let me make sure we're in focus here. Okay, so when we look at one of these paper pieces, so now I'm in the A section. So all of these are A's, so we're good there. The next thing we do is the sewing order and the piecing order, and that's with the number right there. So this big area is first, and then A2, A3, and A4. So that's the order we're going to be sewing in. So first of all, I need a piece that's as big as this letter A, A1, plus seam allowances. And you want to be super duper generous because you can cut them down. You can't add them. So it's a big problem with paper piecing if you have too little seam allowance, but not a problem at all if you have too much. So definitely err on the side of more than you need, and you're going to be happy that you did. So that's what we're going to do. So I think I'm going to just make the top red. I don't know if I want any of this crazy stuff in the top part. So let's find an area that is just that red. So here's this this bottom corner. We'll do. All right. So I'm gonna just get a square. Just cut a square. I'm not gonna worry about the shape of this right now. I'm just gonna try and get a general shape that's as big as that, and I can even put this here as a guide. So again, remember, our piece needs to be as big as this shape plus a generous seam allowance. I'm going to do probably a 1/2 inch, and I'm actually going to cut from the back. So I'm gonna just snip and snip, and then we'll be done. Actually, I might save that cute little apple there, so I'll snip this way. I don't know if I'm really saving that apple. All right. So here's what I love about paper piecing. I can cut a blob, and it's gonna be just fine. So here's our first piece. This is gonna be A1. So now look, I did do it like quite a bit bigger, and that's kind of what I'm going for. We love the blobs, exactly. The blobs are the best part of paper piecing for sure. So for the first one, like A1 or B1, anytime there's the one where you don't have anything sewn yet, I pin that. I'm actually gonna pin it parallel to between A1 and A2. I find that kind of helpful. Okay. You got it pinned. Oh, another thing to note, you're putting the right side of the fabric outward. So, so we're looking at this, and right side of the fabric going outward. Our template is actually flipped, so when we're done, it'll be in the right direction. So, okay, next. So we got A1, right? Use a dot of glue stick. I read that too. You know what? Should we do the glue stick today? I haven't tried the glue stick way of doing it, so I do have some glue stick. Why don't we try that tonight? So I am going to put a little dab of glue. I've never done this before with the glue, so we'll give it a go. I'm going to just put a tiny dab on that A1 piece. All right, perfect. All I want is it to just stay in place for a short amount of time. I don't need a permanent glue scenario. I just need it to be there for a tiny hair bit of a time. Stays flat without a pin. Yeah, that's nice, because the pin is annoying for sure. So, okay. We got our first piece in place. Now the next thing we're going to do is we need an A2 piece, and we are going to sew A1 to A2. So before doing that, you want to have a postcard or a business card or some sort of thick piece of paper. One of those little magazine advertisements that you can take out of a magazine, just a little postcard type thing. What we're looking for is something with a straight edge that's thin, that is a little thicker than a normal piece of paper. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the postcard, and we are going to put it along the line in between the two places we're going to sew. And we're going to go from A1 to A2. We go in order. So A1, A2, and then A3, then A4. So we're going to put our postcard on that line in between the A1 and the A2. And then we're going to fold that entire piece of paper, the whole entire edge, up along the edge there. All right, so now you're going to cut a seam allowance. So this is why you can cut blobs and have perfect little pieces when you're done. So we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And so you just want to lay your 1/4 inch on there, on the edge like that, and then we can cut our piece right out. And I have a special tool, and we talked about it last night, that does this so much faster. So, I'm lining it against this 1/4 edge. Actually, we'll do that right now. So this is what you'd normally do if you just have a ruler. Find that 1/4 inch, align it along the fold that we made, and we made that fold with the postcard. So you line it up good along that edge, and then you cut that off. But a different tool that we talked about this last night is the add a 1/4 ruler. So I had never heard of this before starting the Splendid Sampler, and I bought one, and I used it for the last paper piecing project, and everything went so much faster. So it's basically a ruler. It's just like your normal ruler material, but it has a little lip on the edge. And the good part about the lip is that after I've made this fold, I can just butt this up right against that fold, which is easy to do with that lip. and then cut. I got my 1/4 inch right away there. So I'm gonna just do that. All right, here's a scrap. So this is ultimately gonna be my perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. So now I can fold this little piece of paper back. Okay, now we can worry about A2. Now that we did our fold, got our seam allowance, now we can worry about our next thing. Seems like it would be easier to keep it straight too. Yeah, I guess this comes in a shorter ruler too, which would, for these really small pieces would be nice, but I figured I got the 12-inch one just because, someday I might do a larger paper piece thing maybe, and I might want this larger one, so that's why I got this one. All right, so now we need A2. A2 I've colored yellow, so that is my little yellow fabric. I know, I'm not usually a gadget person either, and I'm trying to give into the gadgets a little bit with the Splendid Sampler, just to give them a try, just because I'm not so gadgety. And I don't know, this one sure made this stuff go quicker, for sure. I was really actually against getting this. I didn't get it for a long time, because I'm like, why the heck do I need a freaking whole ruler just to measure a 1/4 inch? I can measure a 1/4 inch and cut, right? So that's where my brain was at, but I'm like, everyone keeps talking about it, I'll give it a try. And it really does speed up the process, and it takes, what I love about paper piecing is that you don't have to think so much. Like I said, with the cutting, you can just cut blobs, and you can just sew along the line. This takes out another level of thinking. You don't have to even line up your lines. You just plop it on there and cut. Slap it down and cut, exactly. That's exactly it. So it just took out a whole nother level of thinking, and that's why I love paper piecing. So, all right. And you know what? That glue stick was really nice too, actually, just now. That took away my pin, which made it flat and easier to cut and all that too. So I kind of like that glue so far. So, all right, I got another scrap here. Again, we're going to do A2, and what we're looking for, again, is something, we need a piece of fabric that's going to be as big as the piece plus our big old generous seam allowance, right? So don't forget that we want it to be a generous seam allowance. So this piece looks plenty big. Here we go. Like I can, we got a good, almost a 1/2 inch seam allowance on either side, and this piece will be plenty big. So I'm going to just trim it down because I don't need this much. But again, I'm going to leave a big old seam allowance. So there we go. Here is my piece number 2. It has a decent straight edge. If it doesn't, I'll cut a little straight edge on here. Because what we're going to do now is, with right sides together, I'm going to line up. I know that this is my perfect seam allowance edge because we did that fold and cut. So I know I really want this edge. And I'm going to line up a straight edge of the new piece with the straight edge that we just cut. So like that. And now we're going to just sew along that line. But what I like to do, I don't really need to do it with this because I know my piece is big enough. But what I do like to do on bigger pieces or really awkward pieces, because sometimes, we have a weird triangle. I know in some of the other paper piecing blocks, there were some funny triangles. So I did this technique a lot. Again, I probably don't need to do it here because I know my piece is big enough. But I like to pretend sew before I do it. So, and how I do that is ultimately we're going to sew along this line. So I'm just going to pin along that line as if I sewed it. So I'm pretend sewing along that line. There we go. And now I'm going to flip it up as if I'm pretend ironing, and this is where my piece is. And then I'm going to flip it around. I want to make sure that I've covered my entire piece here. And clearly I've gone way over the edge. I have plenty, right? But every once in a while, you might flip it up and be like, oh, my piece ends right here. I need to scooch it over this way or whatever. So it's good if you're unsure to do this fake sewing with a little pin. But again, this piece is huge. I've clearly covered this whole area, so I'm good to go. So I'm going to just take that pin out. All right, I have, let's just check these are lined up again. So I got my straight edges lined up, and I'm going to just hold them together. You could pin this, but why bother? I'm just gonna hold it there. And then we're gonna go to the sewing machine. Zoop. Okay, I think I'll try and maybe angle it. Let me know if we flip, because I know it kind of likes to flip when I do this. So all right. So one thing with the sewing machine that you're gonna want to do is make your stitch length a lot smaller. Oh, stiletto, good idea. Here we go. I'm like a little discombobulated today, but here we go. Got my stiletto already. The stiletto will help me guide it through the machine. It's like an extra skinny, tiny finger. Instead of my fingers being here, I can just guide it with the stiletto. But for sewing with paper piecing, you want to reduce your stitch length. And the reason for that is it perforates. So each stitch is going to add like a hole in this paper, right? And like a perforated piece of paper that you can tear off. That's going to make it really easy to tear this paper off later. So you want to reduce the stitch length. And it looks like I have my threads kind of all over the place here. Gotta thread my machine a little here. So I'm gonna just, I'm turning my stitch length a little less. I usually stitch at 1/12 of an inch, and I'm just turn my dial a little bit more. Okay, here we go. So my pieces are still lined up. So I'm gonna sew directly on this line here. And what I'm not gonna do is go into A3 here. So I'm gonna just stay to this line, but I am gonna go into the seam allowance a little. So I'm gonna if you're going off the piece, you want to go off a little bit. But if you're gonna go into another segment, you don't want to do that. So I'm gonna start exactly at this point. I'm gonna back tack it, which is just, you go forward and back once on the sewing machine just to hold that in place. And then I'm going to sew directly on that line into the seam allowance, and then I'll back tack it again right there. So that is the plan. Get this guy on. Okay. Hold on here, got the pedal. Okay, so now I'm just gonna back tack it and go right directly on that line. See, this takes, I don't have to worry about my scant 1/4 inch. That's what this guy's here for, to get my scant 1/4 inch. None of that in paper piecing. You just have to stitch along the line. So no thinking there. It's just like, just like coloring basically. So all right, there we are. I went a little bit into the seam allowance. And here, I'll show you guys. All right, so we started on that line right there, and we stitched on the line in between A1 and A2. And then I went into the seam allowance just a little and back tacked it there too. So all right, when you're finished sewing, you want to immediately snip your ends. That's gonna save a lot of trouble later. Alrighty. And then this side. Okay, and that's our first piece, A2 or A1 to A2. So now we're just going to flip it up and press that, and those are our first 2 pieces. It doesn't look like much now, but those will ultimately be this little yellow piece and this red piece here. So all right, I'm gonna scooch to the iron. And now we're started, Kathy. It's the start of our cute little dress. Okay. So one thing with your pressing that you want to remember is, and I learned this the hard way during a scope, is you don't ever want to press on your printout. So I don't want to go like that, because all this ink is going to transfer to my iron, and that's not good. So I'm going to put it downward. You can actually kind of see, if you can see, I've I have other shapes that I've pressed downward on my ironing board. So if you want to keep your ironing board clean, you can put a little cloth here, and then it won't mark up your table. But I don't care. So we're gonna just press it, just get it going. I know this block is gonna be so cute when it's done. I'm super excited. So I'm just pressing the seam, and then I'm gonna finger press it up because we don't have these little edges sewn. So I want to just kind of guide that with some finger pressing. There we go. So that's what it's going to look like upward. And then I'm going to just press that there. All right, I think my iron might need to wake up a little bit, so hopefully this will work just fine. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so that is our first paper piece. And it's A1 and A2. So now you can see when you flip it this way, you have the correct sides. So there we go. So now let's move on to A3. Okay, next step, guys. So now we just repeat the process, basically. So now we just did A1 to A2. So what's next is 3. So we do A3. Now, A3, it's going to be A3 with everything else that's been done. Oh, no problem. I got block 11 up last night. Block 11 was my block, and I hadn't had it transferred to YouTube yet, and I think I got all of it except for the marathon day on there. So, all right. So we're A3 and everything else that came before. So see, it crosses over both. So I like thinking of it, instead of thinking of like, oh, I'm sewing A3 to A2, I think of it as sewing A3 to everything previous. So all right, first things first is we get our postcard out, and we put it right along that line. This is a teeny tiny piece, but it's fun though. I really like these little pieces. Yeah, Mom loves number 11 the best. All right, so now you're just gonna fold that edge up. So there we go. We got our little fold. So now we get to add a quarter in here. Plop that right down. There we go. And cut our 1/4 inch seam allowance. So this is what I love. You can cut crazy blobs, but you still end up with perfect seam allowances without having to think about anything. I love it. So, okay. Now we'll fold this back. All right, A3 is one of our background pieces. So what do we got for that? Here is my background fabric. This is such a teeny tiny small thing though. I bet you I have a scrap. So let's dive into the scrap bin here. Aha! We got all sorts of scraps. Let's get all those out. Here's a nice one. I think that will do us well right there. Okay. Out of here, big fabric. We don't need you yet. Okay, so here we go. So again, we need a piece that covers this. Oops, getting focused again. We need a piece that covers our A3 plus the generous seam allowance, right? So this is a pretty small piece. I'm going to just clip a little edge off of here, and I think we'll be plenty good. There we go. This is going to be our scrap. I'm going to actually cut a clean edge on there too, because I like having that straight edge to match up to the other straight edge. So I'm just going to clean this one up a little. There we go. So, okay, what we're going to do again is, all right, we're sewing A3, so we're going to match that perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance that we just cut. We're going to match that edge with that clean edge that we just did here, and we're gonna try and place it in the place where it's going to cover. You know, I don't want to like put it way down here because that's not going to cover our little piece. I want to make sure that I'm going to be able to cover our little piece here. I know, it's so little, isn't it? I love it though, it's so cute. I love the tiny, tiny, tiny paper piecing like this because you can use up so many little pieces, and when you stitch and have this tiny little piece, it's kind of magic. Because if you don't know that this was all done by paper piecing, someone's going to think that you magically cut that tiny little piece and sewed it to that other tiny little piece, and I just think that's cool. That's actually what's happening here. I mean, we are sewing these tiny pieces together. We just have like a little guide for us. So, okay. So we have those two pieces together. I could do that test by putting the little pin in to see if we've covered that piece, but this is a pretty big piece. I'm thinking we're going to be just fine, so I'm not even going to bother. So, again, I put right sides together. Don't want to forget that. All right, then I'm going to flip it around again, and we are going to sew right along this A3 between A3 and everything else that we've previously done. So that's this line here. I know all the lines can start to get confusing, but we're doing A3 and everything else that came before. So this line, and since this is touching, our outer edge of the shape, I'm going to go into the seam allowances on both sides a little bit and do the back tacking too. So, all right, back to the machine. Okay, let's set this guy down. All right, get the stiletto out again. All right, so right along this line, and again, I'm gonna just add that going into the seam allowance as well. I like using the stiletto just to kind of line up along that line just to make sure that I'm kind of going straight. I don't know, I kind of like using that as a guide. And into the other seam allowance, a little back tack, and that's that. Easy peasy. All right, I'm gonna grab my other scissors. This guy is just too big. Here we go. Get the little stork out. So right away, I'm going to clip the little threads off. Flip around, clip those threads. Oh, look at our little pieces. That's so cute. Ah, I love it. Okay. So, and then we pretend we're ironing it, and there's our other little piece here. You know what? I could use a clear foot for my sewing machine too. I just have this little slit in here that I can kind of see, but man, a clear foot, that's nice. It doesn't matter so much for paper piecing because you just have to follow that line. Should the back tack be within the sewing line so it doesn't get trimmed off? It could, but once we trim it off, we're gonna sew the pieces together right away. I think the back tack is most important when you're within your shape. Like this, between this A2 line and this A3, that's where you really want the back tack to be. Once you're in the seam allowance, it doesn't quite matter as much. It's just a nice to have, but you're definitely going to want it when you're within your shape. So, all right, let's do the ironing, the pressing, and then we're done with A3. We're going to finish this piece tonight, this cute little piece. All right, so again, I'm not going to put this face up. I'm going to put the printing face down so I don't get my iron all dirty. Just press the seam shortly. And then I'm going to, again, kind of finger press it. And then press a little piece right there. Okay, 3 pieces together. Still looks like a totally crazy deal, but once we start cutting it down, like once we really trim it, here's the start of our little, this is the little top of the little top of the bodice there with the little red. Do you think the tiny iron was worth buying? I think the tiny iron, if I start doing more of that applique, which I can kind of see possibly doing more of that applique, I could see it coming in handy then, because that applique, like when we did the bunny, which that's another block I'm not done yet. But that, I don't know how else I would have pressed that. Doing it, when you press around those freezer papers. That iron definitely came in handy for that. So, I mean, if you can see yourself doing more of that sort of thing, then I'd say sure. But, I mean, it would work on paper piecing too, that little iron, but I don't know. I like my big iron for its weight and doing that sort of stuff. But yeah, for that little handwork where my fingers are going to be right next to the, yes, with the starch applique for sure. Right when your fingers are right close to the iron, I mean, there's no way I would have been able to do that on my big iron without melting my skin off. And that would not have been fun. And, there's been a lot of appliques so far, so I'm assuming there'll be more. So in that case, I like it. All right, so done with that piece. Let's go to the last piece, A4. We did 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we're going to do 4 and everything else. So we're going to sew along that 4 line, everything else. So, okay, first things first, we get our postcard out. And we go along that line between A4 and everything previous. And fold it up. Yeah, Mom likes peeking in on my scopes to see how to do it, and then she watches them and does it that way. All right, add a quarter, butt it up against there. It's not, the add a quarter isn't working as great for me because my cutting board's warped. So it's wanting to stay warped, so I gotta press it down first. So it keeps wanting to slip on me. Actually, if you keep your postcard in there, it actually works a little easier. Actually, a lot easier. I'll do that from now on. Okay, snip. There's my perfect seam allowance. Oh, watching this takes so much of the scariness away. Well, I hope so, because I was freaking out the first time I did this, but then once I kind of got the rhythm of it, I'm like, wow, I don't have to think at all for this. I just have to make sure I go in order of the steps, and I don't have to cut anything, which is awesome. I can just cut blobs. I don't have to, now with the add a quarter, I don't even have to measure a 1/4 inch on here. I just slap it on and cut it out, and it's handy. So, all right, here's another, we got a couple other shapes here. So I need, again, just because, it's important, I'm going to say it again, the piece needs to be as big as your piece here, plus the generous seam allowance. Triangles can be a little tricky, so we could do a test for this one, but these pieces are so small, and I'm cutting pieces that are so much bigger that I think we'll be fine. Maybe I can do this small piece here. This is barely a 1/4 inch bigger, though, so this might be cutting it close, but I'm going to give it a try. We'll do our little test sewing on this one. So I'm going to use this as my straight edge. All right. So I'm going to match that straight edge to that big old straight edge that we just cut here. Right sides together. And I'm trying to match it up. So let's do a test on this one, because I did cut this a little bit small, and I don't want to go through the whole thing of sewing it if I'm not going to make it. If my seam allowances aren't big enough, because that's where the trouble comes in. So I'm going to pretend I've sewn again by just putting a pin right along my sewing line, as if I've actually sewn it already. There we go, like that. There, I pretend stitched it. Kind of, I'm a little off, but I'm good enough there. So now I'm going to pretend open it up like I've ironed it open already. And I'm going to flip it around, and did I cover my piece plus the at least that 1/4 inch seam allowance? And it looks like I'm just good enough here. I'm going to, ultimately we'll cut this at a 1/4 inch and this at a 1/4 inch, and I think I have it in just the right spot. But if I had moved it this way a little bit, you can see that I wouldn't have had a big enough seam allowance here anymore. So it's good to, even on these small pieces, if you ended up with a little small cut, it's good to still do this kind of test sew. So that ended up being in the right spot. So let's take the pin out and let's sew for real. And again, for this one, we're going to sew into the seam allowances again. All right, let me tilt you guys that way. Okay. That's bright. There we go. Okay, my piece is still lined up. This little 1/4 inch guy is kind of in my way here, but oh well. So I'm going to go into the seam allowance again. Come on, threads. There we go. And remember, I'm using that smaller stitch length, so that's something that's not dire if you forget to do that, but it'll make it helpful later. Just following that line, make sure I'm staying right on the line, going into the seam allowance, and back tacking into the hair. Just for telling. Oh my gosh, it's falling ash. Oh my goodness. Yeah, for sure. Because you're in Canada, aren't you? God, that is so scary. Wow, yes, for sure. I'm sending good vibes. Oh, Costa Rica. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh, wow. Well, yes, stay safe, for sure, Marla, because, yeah, that's super scary. Yeah, sending protective vibes your way. Ugh. Wow. I've never lived in a place like that that's scary, like that sort of thing can happen. Yes, definitely keep us updated for sure. Want to make sure that you stay safe. Yes, keep us updated. Alright, I'm just going to finger press this again. I know, we'll worry if we don't see you for sure. So if you're okay and you just can't come in and just pop in for 2 seconds and tell us that you're okay in the evening. Alright guys, here is that side of the little bodice there. So, if we pretend that we've sewn it all in already, then we kind of got this going on for us. Cute, cute, cute. All right, guys, so that is piece 1. Let's see. I'm going to trim it right away, I think. Oh, first time watching live. Oh, I'm so happy that you're here. Willing to sew with others. I know, it's just the funnest. I love the group that we got going on here. Yeah, I'm gonna trim it. I don't always trim it, but I'm gonna trim it this time. Yep, definitely leave the seam allowance. So when I trim, even if it has the paper seam allowance on there already, I always use the edge of our shape as the guide, like the line of our shape as a guide. So even if you have the seam allowance here, I still use this as a guide. Don't cut right on the paper seam allowance. So I could use the add a quarter, but I'm going to use my actual 1/4 inch. So I'm just lining up that 1/4 inch along my edge there. And I'm going to just trim all the way around the shape on that 1/4 inch. Yeah, last time I didn't trim everything beforehand and people are getting anxious. Something left undone. Oh, the animals too. Yes, I'm gonna keep track of you, Marla. Make sure that you're good to go. Oh yeah, Pax couldn't handle that we weren't trimming. But I think in this case, with all these little small pieces, it'll be good to trim right away, because then we can really start seeing what's going on. All right. There we are. So there, now we have a perfectly cleaned up piece. There we are. So, and then what I love is that we have all these perfect seam allowances too, and they came out magically just when, you know, we just cut blobs, just shapes that we didn't have to measure. They were just scraps we had, but now we have perfect edges, perfect seam allowances, and everything is lovely. Ew, look at these little flowers. It's going to be so fun. I'm excited. Yay. You've been wanting to do one of these little dresses for some time. So cute. Oh, neat. So here, then, let's see. Let's get our little guide out again here. So we did A1 right there. So when we flip it, it'll be, you know, this whole entire thing will be flipped. But, you know, so it kind of looks like the D parts here. But there we are. Woohoo! Ooh, I'm going to like this. See, I did a dark background because I figured, okay, this person is going to go out in the evening and go out in her pretty red dress, and it's just going to be fun, and she's going to be out, and I've been watching, so I'm watching, like, all of the Sex and the Cities again, so this is, like, Carrie or someone in her cute dress, and she's gone out in the evening, so this is New York right here with some lights and buildings, but in the evening, because she's out late, so that's what I'm thinking for when I'm sewing this is Sex and the City. Yep. So there we go. I know, now I'm a seamstress, right? I don't sew clothing, so now here I do. All right, guys, I'm gonna flip you around, and we'll just, you know, I'll hold this up so you can see really how small this piece is. But there we are. We gotta start. My girl's wearing a party dress for no reason at all. Exactly. So, all right, guys. Thanks again for coming in. So this is how, look, it is this small. It is teeny, teeny, tiny. So cute. Well, I think I'm going to really like the dark background. I wasn't sure about that at first. I had a light colored background, but I'm like, doesn't feel right to me with this red dress. I'm going to do it in the nighttime. And I have a lot of blue in the rest of my quilt, too. So there we are, part 1, guys, and we'll keep going tomorrow. But this is the process. You just go through this process for every single segment. This is the A segment. You know, do the same for the B, C, D. Doesn't matter that it was this small. Works out great every time. Love paper piecing. So we'll do more of these, and I might, once we get some of the little pieces around here, I might actually start sewing it together just so I can show you guys that before I run out of time, before it turns to be Sunday. So I'll do, let's see, maybe we'll do the B and the D and the E, and then I think we can sew all those together so I can show you just, you know, how you can line up, you have to match up the seams and everything here. So that's what we'll work for. Hopefully we can get to that point before Sunday. So, all right. Again, tomorrow night, 9:30 p.m. Central. Thanks so much for coming in again, guys. And, you know, if you have any questions, bring your questions tomorrow or ask on, this will be on YouTube, so you can put comments in there. And I'll post it on the Facebook page, too, the Splendid Sampler Facebook page. And for YouTube, it's Penguin and Fish Movies is where you can do. And Marla, we are looking out for you, sending good vibes. That's super scary. And, yes, stay safe. All right, guys, I will see you tomorrow. Thanks again. Good night.